You're listening to the Visible Expert Podcast, where we share stories, research, and actionable insights to help B2B marketers and practitioners drive extraordinary growth in their professional lives. What's up, everybody? I'm John Tyerman.
And I'm Kelly Waffle.
And you're listening to the Visible Expert Podcast. And we've got a 10 out of 10 show for you today. We talked with Joe Pulizzi from the Content Marketing Institute, and he sounded refreshed after taking some time off. I thought his energy was really great on the podcast.
Joe is a legend around content marketing. Anything you wanted to know about content marketing, Joe is there to help.
I've heard him referred to as the godfather of content marketing. Now, that's quite the title right there. I don't know how you can beat that.
No, I agree with you there.
All right, well, before we get into the show, our episode today is sponsored by the Hinge Research Institute. And so if you're a marketing director or practitioner who wants to use original research in your content marketing strategy, the Hinge Research Institute helps SaaS companies and consulting firms who want to really tap into the professional services markets. So we offer a range of services anywhere from sponsoring original research to doing custom research on a specific topic or an industry. So if you're looking to use that in your content marketing, give us a shout.
Yeah, and I'd also say we've got a staff of analysts here that you can tap into to talk about that research or to help provide thought leadership around a given topic.
Okay. So, Kelly, what was your one biggest takeaway from our chat with Joe?
I actually have two, John. So, one...
Well, I asked you for one, and you're giving me two. Hopefully you don't take mine.
Right, I won't. The thing that I see, not only with Joe, but with a lot of these great thought leaders that we're talking to, these visible experts, is that they talk about offering value without asking anything in return. Mm-hmm. You know, Joe made the point of give, and I couldn't agree with that more. That is what's really going to help a lot of people become educated, and it helps everybody. All the boats rise with that kind of tide. And the other point that I like that he made was he talks about Star Wars, George Lucas, and his relationship with 20th Century Fox, and how they looked at how to leverage Joe for George for Star Wars, and it turned out a lot differently from that. So I won't give it away, but it's really Joe is really trying to challenge you to look at the way you look at business and marketing a little bit differently than the traditional methods.
All right.
How about on your end?
Well, on my end, my one takeaway from our chat with Joe was his branding, and I love it. I love his the Orange Effect Foundation, which is the foundation dedicated to finding speech therapy and technology resources for children and families who need it the most. And part of that is the kind of his own personal brand and how he has aligned himself with the color orange. And he's used that consistently throughout his career, and it's something that stuck. He even talked about wearing a NASA spacesuit to some of his events. So that was my one thing that stood out, is the consistency in his branding throughout the years.
Well, he's definitely paid his dues around the color orange. I've seen him at some events where he's worn the orange suit that he talks about in the podcast, but also, he mentioned that he was a 10-year ticket holder with the Cleveland Browns, so he's definitely paid his dues.
He spent some time in the dog pound. Yeah. All right. Well, our interview with Joe, I thought was one of our best yet. Really excited to share that with you guys. And on the back half of the pod, Kelly shares a story of Fender and Les Paul and how that relates to marketing technology. I thought that story was really cool. All right, and we are joined with Joe Pulizzi. Joe, welcome to the Visible Expert Podcast. How are you?
Well, I'm fantastic. It's nice to be noted as a visible expert. I guess that's the deal, right? If I'm on the Visible Expert Podcast, then I'm a visible expert, or does that happen afterward? I don't know.
No, you've made our list. Congratulations.
Whew, that is a relief. Thank you, guys.
Check that off your bucket list.
Thanks. Boy, it's been a long time coming. I dedicate this to all the little people.
Exactly. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So, Joe, before we begin, as an outspoken Cleveland Browns fan, are you excited about the direction the team is headed with the likes of Baker Mayfield and Odell Beckham?
Yeah, Odell.
That's the best question I've received ever on a podcast interview. I have to tell you that I'm excited. So I've been a season ticket holder for about 10 years. This is the first year that on StubHub or SeatGeek that they're actually going for more than face value.
Wow.
Usually that's not usually with every other team, you got to pay a premium if you want it. No.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, basically not last year, but the year before when I think we were 1-15 that year. I don't know if that was the 0-16 year, but if you wanted to give your Browns tickets away, you had to include a $20 bill with it.
You had to pay a premium.
You had to pay to give them away. Honestly, we're so excited. I mean, what Baker Mayfield did last year, and you got the Beckham Jr. coming in, and they added a lot in free agency. We're all thinking playoffs this year for the first time since 2003. Which, of course, the Browns haven't had a championship since 1964. That's the year before the Super Bowl. So we're all anxious, and Cleveland is a football town. I mean, even though we've had LeBron and won the championship and it broke the drought in 16, and you have the Indians that have been very competitive. We're a Browns town. So if we ever win the championship, there's going to be no business done in Cleveland for probably 6 months. We're all taking off and enjoying it.
Well, that's a good business tip, so we'll keep that in mind. Thank you, Joe.
Yeah.
So, no, that's great. And, here we're based right outside of Washington, D.C., and it seems for years the Redskins have been in the doghouse, but the Browns have been in the dog pound, and in Cleveland, that's a better scenario, right?
Yeah. Hey, when was the last you had a championship in? Was it the Doug Williams year? Wasn't that the last one?
That's going back a ways.
Yeah, that's back in 1991. So.
Oh, see, that's
been a while.
You got to get to at least 50 years, and then you can play. So you guys got to. That's basically yesterday. You won a championship.
Exactly.
Oh well, Joe, I could sit here. I'm a huge football fan, so I could sit and talk sports all day. But alas, we are the Visible Expert Podcast.
Yeah, that's a different podcast.
Yeah, coming soon.
Yes.
Thanks for the teaser, Kelly. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So, Joe, here at Hinge, we define influencers in the B2B space as visible experts. And this podcast is focused on sharing the diverse stories of our guests and how they built their personal brands. Most people know you as the content marketing expert, and some call you the godfather of content marketing. From your days as founder of the Content Marketing Institute and the content marketing world, you're also a 5 times author and popular keynote speaker. Can you walk us through your journey to becoming a visible expert?
Well, it's hard to answer that question because I just found out I was a visible expert, but I'll go through it.
Congratulations again.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's not rocket science. It was a lot of luck and a lot of great people that helped along the way, obviously, to build the business, to build Content Marketing Institute, to get it to a point where my wife and I were able to sell that business and just really do some fun things and enjoy life and enjoy the kids. But, once you find that area, of course, everyone's a visible expert in one area, whatever that area is. You focus on a niche where you can actually be the leading expert in the world. And I felt when I got into the content marketing business in 2000, went out on and started the business in 2007, and it started to really position it. It wasn't really called content marketing at the time.
Right.
We came out, really pushed it. Maybe that was one of the things. Like there's a lot of people listening to this. And then HubSpot did the same thing with inbound. They called, even though, inbound marketing had been done for a long time. They called it inbound marketing. Content marketing was called custom content, custom publishing, custom media. I did some testing, real life testing with CMOs on those different topics, and content marketing was the one that resonated. So we really started, wrote a blog post and basically said, hey, I'm calling the industry content marketing now. That's the way it's going to be. And friends like Brian Clark and other people got behind it, and it just became the industry term, which was very, very helpful for everything. But if you just think about, okay, focus on that topic to a particular group of audience members, smaller the better, deliver value without asking anything in return as consistently as you possibly can, starting with one channel. And that's it. I mean, that's the formula. That's the formula for every visible expert out there. You find your channel, you find your story, you deliver value, and you give. And then you will receive in return. I think the problem is a lot of people that want to be influencers, whatever that term means, whatever that want to build a business, they want to receive things back too quickly. And you have to, I mean, Content Marketing Institute, what became CMI, we started in 2007, and we really didn't start to monetize that platform until 2010. So it's almost 3 years of just giving content without monetizing it, without asking anything in return. All we did was say, would you just sign up for this newsletter and we'll deliver value to you on a regular basis. Once we did that in May of 2010, initially then launched CMI, and then we started to launch all these other products in content marketing world, as you mentioned, and other things, and everything just worked out. So I would say the key is just give of your knowledge, give everything away. Don't hold anything back. And if you do that on a consistent basis and actually build an audience of subscribers, then you can build whatever business you want.
Mm-hmm. Joe, we've talked to several visible experts, fairly recognized, and they all come back with that same point around providing value without asking anything in return. I'm a big believer in that myself. And continuing on those lines, you are currently the founder and a board member of the Orange Effect Foundation. And I know that this foundation is dedicated to finding speech therapy and technology resources for children and families who need it the most. I'm really curious, Joe, where did the name come from and what gets you excited about this foundation?
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I do that a lot in my free time. We started working on this thing in 2007, initially became a 501c3 in 2014, called it the Orange Effect Foundation. Probably the naming, if you're asking on the naming idea, everything around me and my family is orange, because I branded, good or bad, I branded myself as orange a long time ago. And I can't really go to the store without wearing orange, or people call me. I'm not just saying that. Like if I go to Giant Eagle, our local grocery store, and somebody sees me and I'm not wearing orange, first question they will say, are you feeling okay? You're not wearing orange. Now, that might seem weird, but from a business standpoint, very helpful. So Everyone expects me to have my orange suit or orange shirt or orange shoes, which I have plenty of in my closet. And that's my attire, and sort of accidentally fell into that because, I started the business in 2007. The colors were orange and gray. I wanted to support the business and just bought a bunch of orange shirts. I just thought that's what you're supposed to do. And so I went out speaking, took pictures, did a photo shoot. So all my pictures on the web were orange and all my speaking were orange. And then I did a gig in my first international gig in Brussels, Belgium. And they asked me to wear a black tux, and I said, I'll wear a monkey suit if you want me to. You paid me to come over here and speak. That's fine. So I did my speech in the black tux. I got off stage. 3 people I'd never met before, they came up to me in broken English and said, why aren't you wearing orange? And I was dumbfounded. I was like, what? Is that a thing? And I realized that, oh my God, I branded myself that way. And then went off the deep end in orange after that. Everything became orange. I mean, content marketing world, if you go to that, they have an orange snack table with just oranges and carrots and Cheetos and Orange Crush. So that's what we've done. And then going to Orange Effect Foundation just sort of played into that as well. The orange, I think of when I see the color orange, I think of communication. Orange Effect Foundation is all about, delivering communication help to kids that really need it the most. So kids that can't afford it, that are, a lot of them are on the autism spectrum. They just really need help. They can't, what are they going to do? And we fundraise and get them, speech therapy help. And I think we're up to we provide grants for about 130 kids in 28 states right now.
Wow.
So we're a small group, but we're trying real hard because there's a lot of research in this area, especially around autism. But there's a lot of kids that are autistic that need help now and can't afford it, and insurance doesn't cover it. And that's kind of the gap we're trying to fill.
So what do you do as far as fundraising for the foundation?
Well, I talk on the Visible Expert podcast.
All right.
I'll tell people to go to theorangeeffect.org. We do an annual golf outing coming up in August. That's kind of sort of our big fundraiser. And I'll be speaking about it at Content Marketing World in September. I'm giving a keynote again this year, so I'm going to do that. We're working on a video. I'm just trying to get out there. It's so tough. Everyone has their organizations.
Right.
So we just try to find people that generally people know of somebody. They have a kid who's autistic. They have a nephew or niece or a friend that has a child who's autistic. So they get it. They understand that speaking and playing is more challenging for kids like that. And if you go without during that critical time, those are lost years. Like from the ages 2 to 7, if you need speech therapy, you need to have it then, or you might not ever be able to make the progress on a speech standpoint. So that's why we're just, I'm talking to everyone we can on just getting the word out as much as possible. I'm just doing more of that than I used to. I used to just say, content marketing is one thing and Orange Effect is another thing. And now I don't even apologize anymore. The need is so great. I'll go out and talk to anybody and ask for anything. And we're just trying to sign up as many corporate partners and individuals as possible to get them involved.
Well, my wife's been a special education educator for over 30 years. And yeah, she brings up that point a lot about getting intervention sooner than later. So I hope people listening to this podcast will go up and look up your foundation and give so that you can provide more grants to more of these needy children.
Oh, that's wonderful to hear that your wife is doing that. I mean, it's a personal situation for me because my oldest son, Joshua, who's now 17, he was diagnosed on the autism spectrum when he was 2. And if he did not have aggressive speech and play therapy that we got him from age 2 to 6, I mean, we're looking at colleges right now. I mean, he's doing
that's fantastic.
He's doing fantastic.
That's great.
But that's the progress that happens. You don't realize you have to go back and say what happened from ages 2 to 6. And there were some really difficult decisions and things that he had to do to get to a point where he's at now. And there's a lot of kids that want to do that. But if there's a family that's looking to decide, hey, between putting food on the table or speech therapy, they're going to choose food. They need to survive.
Right.
So that's where Orange Effect comes in. So I appreciate you asking me the questions about that.
No, that's great. Happy to help out. But I do have to ask you one more question about this,
Sure.
Joe. And
yeah,
you actually do own an orange suit?
Yes, I own a custom orange suit. It was not cheap.
I bet it wasn't.
You get that. I own about 10 pairs of orange shoes. Might be a few more.
I can see the shoes and the ties and the shirts, but I think you had to do some heavy convincing to get someone to make you the suit.
As a present from my wife, which tells you how crazy she is. She knows. I mean, she wanted to sell this business at some point, and she says, the more we put you out in this orange suit, the more revenue comes in. So you better get out there in that orange suit. So that's what she did, and it worked out fairly well. But yeah, the first Content Marketing World, I came out in an orange NASA jumpsuit.
Wow.
That was my thing. And then I wore an orange shirt under my black blazer. now in Content Marketing World 2012, that's where I came out. We went all in because we knew that we were on to something, and got the custom orange suit that people still have. I only break it out on special occasions, though, usually just for Content Marketing World. But I love that suit. I should name that suit. But
maybe you can use that as a fundraiser. Someone can have dinner with you wearing the orange suit.
The orange. I don't think anybody would pay for that. People usually try to get away from me when I'm wearing that. But yeah, it's fun. It's a little gimmicky, but I've totally bought into the orange thing. People come, and what's amazing is if you go to Content Marketing World, half the people there wear orange. I mean, it's a whole movement. It's just funny how that happened, and we sort of did it accidentally, and pick up on that with your brand. But I talk about that in my books. Content Inc. specifically, as a small business owner, grab on to something. If you know Mari Smith, Mari Smith, the expert behind Facebook, B2B and Facebook, and she used to wear turquoise everywhere. And and she used to decorate her, as she did speeches, she decorated the desks around her and the seats and the podium. And I think that really was one of her things as well that really helped her grow. Because the easier you make it for people to know who you are, back to the visible expert portion, I mean, it really does work. So focus on those things that are truly quirky and truly you, because maybe 10 years ago it was weird, but today people accept it and they'll pay you money to do it, which is really weird to say, but it's true.
Well, wearing orange, that's a great way to stand out in the marketplace and when you're doing speaking. But I'll bet you blend right in when you go to your Cleveland Browns games.
Exactly. I don't wear the orange suit to the Browns games, but I do wear my orange hair. I've got a hat that has orange hair coming off the top, and I wear that to every game.
Well, Joe, I wanted to ask you about your book, Killing Marketing, and I was listening to you talk about that book on the Marketing Book podcast earlier today, which I thought was really great. And in the book, you challenge marketing readers to change their organizations from ones that describe features and benefits to ones that deliver value. I particularly liked your example you give around 20th Century Fox and why they decided to buy into George Lucas and his Star Wars idea. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about that?
Well, yeah. By the way, Marketing Douglas in the Marketing Book podcast, he does a fantastic job, and I've been on that podcast many times. But the idea with killing marketing is not that we're trying to kill marketing at all. We actually, Robert Rose, my co-author, and I, we very much believe in marketing, but we feel most of us do it wrong. We think that marketing involves selling our products and services, and that's not true. It's building value for the organization. Well, how best do you build value? You deliver value to an audience base. And then once you do that, you need to think differently about how you monetize that. So a lot of cases from a marketing standpoint, we think, oh, okay, well, we're going to monetize by delivering leads, and those leads are going to become customers or whatever. Well, once you build an audience, you can monetize that audience 10 different ways. You can create more loyalty, better yield. You can actually new products and services that you can launch, product development. You can deliver revenue on the content itself, just like a media company would. You could sell advertising and sponsorship. So if we think differently about this being an asset that we're creating, and the one thing I love about the George Lucas example, 20th Century Fox, basically when you go back, he's trying to create Star Wars. This is 1975 and 76. And he's blowing through money, and they think it's going to be a flop. 20th Century Fox thinks this is not going to work at all. But they owe George Lucas $1 million before the shooting is done and the movie's out. And they think, oh my God, we're so going to lose our money. I don't want to pay this guy $1 million on top of it. What are we going to do? They go to George Lucas. George, being the amazing, intelligent man he is, he says, okay, forget about the $1 million you owe me. Just give me merchandising rights. And they said, oh my God, are you kidding me? Yes. So they gave George Lucas merchandise. So he's building this story platform, if you will. It's called Star Wars. And he traded the rights to the merchandising for the $1 million. So he said, okay. The Fox people were elated. They're like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever. I don't have to pay George Lucas $1 million, and at the same time, he gets the merchandising rights. Okay, let's fast forward to 1995 before Lucas sold to Disney. And if you look over that time, Star Wars as the franchise sold $5 billion in ticket sales. Over that same period of time, they generated $12 billion of merchandising sales. Well, guess who had the majority rights to that? George Lucas. So he made up pretty well on that deal. What'd you think for $1 million trading that in? The point is that once you build an audience like George Lucas has, you can monetize it in many different ways. The 20th Century Fox folks, they thought that how do you generate revenue from a movie? It's by selling tickets. It's the way they've always done it. Well, George Lucas knew that things were changing and said, well, you can generate revenue by a movie. And we see it today through all kinds of different things. And that's where Star Wars was probably the most innovative, is because of the merchandising that they had through. I mean, you could buy anything in Star Wars, right? I had a Star Wars pillowcase and a Star Wars lunchbox and all those things, and everything I bought and my parents bought, George Lucas got the percentage money on that, or all my action figures, if you will. So that's what we're trying to get marketing people to think differently, is you create so much value by building an audience and delivering an editorial product on a consistent basis. We really need to think differently about the ways we monetize that value. And so Killing Marketing goes through the idea of you can monetize 10 different ways once you build this asset and you're not just interrupting people through advertising all the time.
Ah, that's a great story. And, I like it because it is a story and it's very visual. It's very easy for people to understand. Also, Joe, in that book, you talk about marketing being viewed as a cost rather than an investment. Can you explain why marketing is seen that way?
Because in most corporate companies, it is. I mean, marketing is on the expense line, and they think, okay, we'll have this $2 million marketing budget or whatever size company you are, and we're going to have to spend this, and hopefully something will trickle up into the generating revenue line or the cost savings line down the road. And then they do it again year after year. And it's just a cost. It's just like my phones are a cost, or the internet access is a cost in a company. And marketing is looked at as a cost. Well, it's not supposed to be looked at as a cost. It's supposed to be looked at as an investment. And what does an investment do? An investment builds an asset, and it's supposed to grow over time. So that's where you really have to change the way you market to do that, though. So if you just, let's just say you advertise and sponsor stuff. But by the way, there's nothing wrong with that. Every company can advertise and sponsor. It's just a majority of what we do as enterprises is spent on the advertising side. So if we do that, most time we have to deliver our marketing and product sales right away, and doesn't necessarily build an asset over the long period. You could say brand value, sure, hard to measure, but you could absolutely do it. Well, once you build that audience, let's say you build an audience in your B2B company of 20,000 opt-in subscribers to something. Oh my gosh, that is a monetizable asset that you could use forever if you keep that audience. I mean, look at the New York Times. How does the New York Times do it? They've totally changed their business model because they've been growing their digital subscribers, and it's amazing to see the transformation of that company. Well, what's New York Times doing now? Well, yeah, do they deliver revenue off this directly from the audience? Absolutely, they do. They generate direct digital monthly subscription fees. Great. Well, they're starting to get into the event business. You're going to see New York Times launch products and services. So what you're seeing media companies and product and service companies are doing the same exact thing. It's just on the one side, media side, it's called a business model. And on the product and service side, it's called marketing. Content marketing, in fact, is what we're calling it. So you're not going to see the difference in the business models of either side, or how they actually go to market and create these assets. It's just going to see, does somebody sell products and services? Do they not? Do they sell media? The answer is both sides. Successful companies, both sides will sell that, and you won't be able to tell the difference between a media company and a Cisco Systems or a Microsoft or any B2B company out there.
Yeah, I like the how you explain that marketing is an investment in building an asset over time, and marketing campaigns can be fleeting and last weeks, months, so forth. One of the tips I've heard you give is evaluating marketing as a whole and not by campaign. Can you explain why that's so important to marketers?
Everyone wants to talk about attribution. I mean, how long you guys know this? I mean, how
Mm-hmm.
long have we been talking about attribution? And we want to, the rise of marketing automation tries to force us to say that this marketing activity was responsible for this revenue. Now, you can do that in your company and say that that's it, but that's not how it works. It's usually multiple touch points. If you look at any research, could be 7, could be 9, could be 12 different touch points in different ways that people end up contacting the company or doing something. So if you just look at one thing in a vacuum, there's no way you can tell the story or know what that thing is doing, or something will get the lion's share and something else won't. So let's look at Salesforce. So Salesforce has their event Dreamforce.
Mm-hmm.
So you have 150,000 people going to Dreamforce. Well, do you just look at that in a vacuum by itself and say, okay, well, we have to look at that as a media property? Or do we say, okay, we have to look at the 17 other things that we do that go into Dreamforce that also help us sell products and services? That's almost impossible to do. There's so much marketing coming out of that event that helps them sell Salesforce products and services. You don't know whether it's the event itself, whether it's the side marketing, whether it's the podcast, whether it's the mini magazine, whether it's the webinars. I mean, they've got 70 other things that they're doing along with it. So you don't want to necessarily look at it as this campaign, this small program, this thing that we do. You want to build the ecosystem around it. Now, to do that, you have to understand what audience you're targeting and what you're trying to do with that audience. What do you want? What's the behavior you're trying to change? And then you can build the ecosystem. I'll give you an example. So this is Disney's business model. I took Content Marketing Institute's business model. We totally stole from Disney. It's the same thing. So Disney creates their motion picture enterprise animation. And do they monetize that? In just looking at that, do they monetize that? Say, oh, yeah, they do. But what are they really trying to do? What they're really trying to do with that is they're trying to have people go to Disney World through that. That's what I mean. If you look at his visual business model from 1957, which I have hanging in my living room, you have the motion picture enterprise in the middle, and then it all works together in trying to deliver other things to other people to get them to try everything, and so they can monetize all different types of things. So you say, okay, well, you've got people going to the movies, and you got people downloading the comic books and the magazine and buying merchandise from that, and then you got people watching the cartoons, and you got people going to Disney World, and you got the books, and you've got everything else that happens. And you don't think about it, it's all you're trying to create one media enterprise. So that's, instead of one campaign or one thing, I want you to think about what is the story you're trying to tell through all your different communication activities, and then you can better feel whether or not things are happening. So if you look at Content Marketing Institute, you might say, okay, how's their podcast, This Old Marketing, doing? We started that in 2013. You'd say, well, it delivers about $5,000 or $7,500 in revenue a month. Well, that's smaller compared to what everything else is bringing in. It takes a couple hours to do. I don't know if it's worth doing. But then when you look at those people that sign up for the podcast, become some of our very best customers. They spend the most in Content Marketing World. They spend the most at Content Marketing University. They go to our niche events. They buy other products that we offer. Then you start to see, oh my goodness, if we just looked at the podcast in this one way, direct revenue, boy, that would have been horrible. That would have been terrible. But if we look at it through the ecosystem and what it's trying to do in building a relationship with the audience we're trying to target, it's invaluable. So that's where I think a lot of chief marketing officers are short-sighted, and they don't see the effects of some of these communications. And you really have to understand, first you have to go to the audience. What are you trying to say to the audience? What are you trying to do long-term? What's your strategy? And then you come back and say, okay, this makes sense for our long-term strategy, instead of, I've got to sell 10 more widgets tomorrow. What are we going to do?
Yeah, I think it's great that you're leveraging the Disney model. I just thought Walt Disney was so brilliant on so many different levels.
By the way, still today, the leaders at Disney, I mean, so Disney's launching Disney streaming coming up. I heard it's going to be $6 or $6.99, and they're taking all that Oh my goodness! I mean, talk about, so this is the first time, well, not the first time, but this is the first time in a major way you're going to see the content and the distribution owned by the same person. Because Netflix right now, Netflix is backing into that model. So Netflix borrowed everybody else's content and they started owning the distribution channel. And then they started to create their own product, their own content. Well, Disney already has the best content in the world, all the franchises that they have. Well, now they're trying to have the distribution as well and go outside cable and movie theaters and everything else. Well, if they do this successfully, Disney goes to the top of every media model on the planet. And I don't know if people are realizing that that's a possibility that could happen rather quickly.
I think Walt knew it when he said, "It's a small world after all."
He probably did. If he would, he needed a couple more years on that visual business model. Because that's, and I love that. I don't know if anybody hasn't seen that image, you could probably find it. But Disney visual business model I think I did a podcast or did an article about it somewhere. It's in Content Inc., but you don't have to buy the book to get it. It's somewhere online. You can see it. It's just worth seeing to see in 1957 how he looked at content and how it all affects each other.
And I don't think it's bad to buy your book either. So
thank you very much. I appreciate it.
No problem, Joe. Hey, as we talked about earlier, Joe, you've been using the phrase content marketing for a very long time. So from your perspective, what are a couple of tried and true tips that you have found have resonated with your audience? And what are some of the trends that you're still seeing out there in the content marketing space?
Well, on the B2B side, for best practices or next practices, doesn't matter. They're all the same. Content marketing industry has been around for over hundreds of years. Ben Franklin was a content marketer. you can go back and look at all this. Basically, who's your audience? Focus on the most niche audience you possibly can. Smaller audience, the better, because you can deliver more value to that audience. Then you figure out, okay, what's the story you're going to tell that's different than everyone else's out there? That's a huge one for B2B companies, because what happens is most B2B companies create content that's just like every other B2B company in their space. They're competing with the media companies. So you have to find what we call the content tilt. You have to find an area of little to no competition from a content standpoint that you actually have a chance to break through all the clutter. This is easier said than done. But you have to do that. You have to find, that's what we did with content marketing. Nobody was talking about custom publishing the same way that we were in 2007, like we did with content marketing. That's why we were able to break through really quickly when a lot of people weren't. And we had to consistently publish around that. So that goes to the next one. You find your content tilt. You find that you don't spread that content over every channel possible. You find one content platform with one content type, audio, textual, visual, and become the leading expert around that area. So do your podcast, do your e-newsletter, do your video series, but don't do all three at the same time until you become a real media company. You have to start somewhere first, and then make sure whatever you're doing, deliver consistently. If your weekly newsletter, deliver every week at the same time. Same with your podcast, same with your blog posts, whatever you're doing. And if you do that over 12 to 18 months, you should see some positive things happen in your organization. So that's very simple. It's not a rocket science model. This is the same way it's been done forever. It's just that most people, they duplicate other people's content ideas and don't come up with something original. And then they get real excited to start with it. They'll start doing things for a couple months and then they die off. And most content marketing programs last 6 months or less. And you're not going to see anything in 6 months or less. It takes longer than a year to build a relationship with an audience member. And so you're going to have to give it about 12 to 18 months minimum. And if you don't have that time, then don't do it at all. Then just do something else. But if you're going to, you're trying to build an asset here, just like you're investing in the stock market. You're not day trading here. You're going to do something over a long period of time. As for your question on what's next, I mean, there's going to be there's a lot of automated content out there, a lot of robots doing a lot of things, but people want engaging stories. They want their Game of Thrones, just like everyone else does, just like always. We're engaging in as much media as we ever have. People are thirsty for content that's going to inspire them and educate them and make their lives better in some way. And any company can deliver that today, which is great. You don't have to be a media company. There's no barriers to entry in the content creation space. So I really believe the difference between innovative companies and those that are just sort of solved is this idea of delivering value to an audience on a regular basis through storytelling. I mean, this is not new. It's just the way it's the Amazon. That's how Amazon built their model. They really did. I mean, look at Amazon Prime. That was a content marketing initiative if there ever was one. So look at those types of things and just be patient and start simply. And you're not going to get it all at one time. But let's just say, and I'll leave you with this one. Let's just say that you're a company, that you have some money, you have some budget. There's a huge opportunity right now to buy media companies that become your content marketing platform. So there's media companies that are struggling out there because they're struggling with monetization, not with readership, not with subscribership, but with monetization. Well, if maybe you have the monetization, maybe you have the products and services already, but you need that channel or you need that content brand. Go out there. We did that a couple times at Content Marketing Institute. We bought our awards program. We bought an event. There's no reason why it can't be done. We see some really good examples in B2B right now of companies doing that. So I think that's probably the next couple of years, you're going to see a lot of media companies in B2B being bought out, not by other media companies, but by product and service companies.
Interesting.
Joe, you talk about consistently delivering over the course of time, and you've consistently delivered the Content Marketing World event. And so I want to ask you, what was it like to see your vision come to life and grow and have it all happen in your hometown of Cleveland?
I thought it was a miracle, actually, because when my wife and I, my wife and I were co-owners in Content Marketing Institute, and I wanted to do this crazy event. And she said, okay, give it a shot. And so we started planning it in 2010. So start planning in September 2010 for a September 2011 event. And I was like, how do we get 100, 150 people to Cleveland for a crazy thing called Content Marketing World? We reserved a very small room at the Renaissance Hotel in downtown Cleveland. And I was just hoping that it would work out. And that year, 660 showed up, which I could not believe it.
Wow.
And we took over the whole hotel and had a bunch of sponsors. And then the next year it became $1 million event. And then now it's a 4,000 person event. And they still get amazing speakers. And it's just to do that in Cleveland, which it shows a couple things. One thing, if you build an audience, and Content Marketing World just didn't happen. It happened through 4 years of really, really amazing editorial by an amazing team on a consistent basis through our e-newsletters and through our blog posts and through our webinars and all the other things we were doing to build an audience that could then make Content Marketing World possible. And a lot of people don't think that, hey, I want to do an event. You have to have an audience behind that event before you launch that. And if you do something of quality, we were always sell second. It was always, we got to make sure we deliver an amazing experience to everyone going to this event. And if you do that, people will come to even Cleveland, Ohio, of all places, to go to an event. But when we first started in Cleveland was 2010, 2011, did not have as good of a name as it is now. Cleveland is sort of a hipper city. We've done a better job branding ourselves. And maybe we had something to do with it, because most of the people that at least came to content marketing world from 2011 to 2015, it was their first time ever to Cleveland. So we tried to show them a good time. And yeah, so we brought a lot of new people to Cleveland and still do. And so, I mean, I think from a tourism standpoint as well, or economic growth standpoint, those things are really good stories that if you wanted to do an event, you're bringing people from the outside, because then you can show them. We show them the Rock Hall. People didn't been to the Rock Hall, or we have some great food. It's a foodie city for sure, and some of the things we can do. It's just exciting to be able to do that in Cleveland. And I'm totally, as you know, I'm a total Cleveland guy and support everything about this city.
Yeah, it seems like you put a lot of thought into everything you do, and you rolled out the Joe Pulizzi's random newsletter in February. I read the first issue, and I just got the second issue, and I've got to tell you, Joe, it really is random.
It's really random. It's absolutely random. It is for it. It does. The audience is still marketers. But what I'm trying to do with that one is talk to them about not just marketing and things that can help them with their lives. And a lot of the marketers that I know, and they're friends of mine, they work way too hard, way too long. Their goals are more around work than they are about family and spirituality and some other things. So I put in lots, like the latest issue. There's a lot of things about marketing. I talk about Disney a couple times, but I also talk about goal setting. I also talk about too much social media and too much use of cell phones and things like that I think that they need to hear as well. And it's a newsletter on my terms. I'm not trying to build a business around it. I just want, it's just, some people said, "Hey, Joe, what do you have to say?" And this is what I have to say right now. And just trying to get people to think a little bit differently about maybe what it means to be a business person today, or an entrepreneur today, or a marketing person today. And it's not all about marketing.
No, it's definitely an interesting read. So I look forward to reading this latest issue later today.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's great to have perspectives, not just from marketing, but from leadership and, a goal setting and, individual personal development. So that's really great. Joe, you had the chance to take a year off after you and your wife sold the Content Marketing Institute to UBM, something that I'm a bit jealous of. What were some of the highlights of that time off? What did you do at that time?
So in October, before I knew that the end of my service at Content Marketing Institute UBM formally was going to be the end of 2017. And people were saying, "Joe, what are you going to do? What's the next thing? You got to start another business." And I was really getting inundated with the questions. I'm like, I don't want to do anything. And I talked to my wife about it, and I said, I think I should do nothing. I don't think I should do anything. And so I started reading up on this idea of taking a sabbatical. And the best way to think about it is just doing a reset on your life, kind of reimagining. You don't have a regular schedule anymore. You're not taking regular meetings. You're focused on direct experiences and doing things you haven't done before, and spending time with the people that are important to you. So January 1st came around. I went totally off the grid, 30 days, no electronics, no social media, no phone, no email. It was fantastic. It's a great way to start a sabbatical, because people get quickly, I put on my Twitter note, I said, I am not going to be on Twitter at all. So don't expect any responses. And the same with email and those types of things. And just went completely off the grid and spent a lot of amazing quality time with the family and my two teenage boys. And was able to do things I never could do before. It was a little bit itchy. It's tough to start, because when you go from working every day to not getting up and not having something, you almost think like you're wasting your time. But then as I repositioned things, I started really reading some books I'd never read before. I started to get together with friends I haven't seen for a long time. A lot more date nights and things that I didn't make time to do in my earlier years. So if you can take it, I wrote an article on LinkedIn about it, just taking a 12-month sabbatical, and what I would recommend to anyone, just from the reset standpoint, is if you can do it for a week, if you can do it for a weekend, if you could do it for 2 weeks or a month, because some people I understand, can't take a year off. That's a big commitment. But we had the financial resources to be able to do that and take that time off. So that's kind of what we did. And I'm not still on sabbatical, because I'm still, we're doing this interview. I'm doing some other things, but I still feel like I sort of am, because right now family is most important, what the kids are doing. And then after the kids go off to college, I mean, my wife and I want to do a year of traveling. So I'm just totally blessed. I know a lot of people don't get to be in this position, so I'm just trying not to waste it.
Well, just speaking with you, you sound re-energized and relaxed, so that sounds really great.
Yeah, it's easy to be relaxed when you don't when you get up and you don't have to work. So a lot of my friends kid me about that, but yeah, it's kind of where the random newsletter came from, Kelly. When you asked that question, now I'm at a point where what's the next chapter for me? And all I'm trying to think about right now is not building a business, so it's different. It's just, how do I help other people? And so you got the Orange Effect Foundation, yes. What's the other thing I'm doing? So I just finished my first fiction novel. It's in the 4th revision of editing. There's stories I want to tell around that I think can be helpful in some way. So I'm working on that. And who knows what else is going to come about. But I've been doing a lot of the sabbatical, the entrepreneurship, the goal setting speeches lately, and that seems to be resonating a little bit. So we'll see where it goes. But there's nothing formal in the plans until the kids go off to college, because that's the priority right now.
Well, that's great. Sounds like you've got your priorities in order. That's intriguing about the fiction novel. So I wouldn't have guessed that, going down that path.
Yeah, so a lot of my friends say, like, I would have never guessed. It's a suspense thriller book about a marketing guy whose father passes away, and he's not sure if there was any hanky panky going on. So he's trying to figure that out, and he uncovers a conspiracy. And it's funny. I talk about marketing concepts in a thriller. I've not read another thriller that does this. So I'm going to be interested to see when I get it out there, especially the marketing folks, if they think it's kind of fun that you've got a marketing, the main character is a marketing agency guy. So we'll see how that goes. But I love the character. I love writing about it. Fiction is much more difficult for me to write, much more challenging than nonfiction. So, and I guess that's one of the other things. I want to do things that I haven't done before that are a little bit challenging. Right. And so that's one thing. So, we'll get this done. I'm going to see if I can get it published, and we'll see where that goes.
Well, it's interesting because leads definitely take on a different meaning in a suspense thriller than they do in the marketing world.
Exactly. Quite a bit different.
Yeah.
Well, Joe, I couldn't think of a better note to end our show on. It sounds like, well, I think your fiction novel is a great way to tell a story and incorporate your thought leadership into that as well. So that's really great. For folks that are listening, what's the best way to get in contact with you, to check you out and to see what's new with Joe?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, joepulizzi.com. That's everywhere. All my books and podcasts and everything else that I'm doing is on there. joepulizzi.com/newsletter is the random newsletter. If you're into marketing and you like that kind of stuff, it might be of interest to you. And then I'm at Joe Pulizzi on Twitter. It's probably I don't do as much social media today as I used to, but if I'm on any platform, it's probably going to be that one. So you can find me at Joe Pulizzi, Pulizzi on Twitter.
Or they could just travel to Cleveland and look for a guy in an orange shirt.
That's right. If you go to Giant Eagle, go to the grocery store, you see somebody in orange, or if you see somebody running the Rite Aid Cleveland half marathon, I'll be the one all in orange. So won't miss me. That's for sure.
So it sounds like there are lots of ways to get a hold of you.
Absolutely. You'll see me. You walk around the city a little bit, you'll see the orange. It's probably me.
Exactly.
Well, Joe, thanks for coming on our show. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Thanks, guys. That was fun.
Yeah, I loved it. Thanks, Joe.
So Kelly, you were telling me a story just now, and I'd really like for our listeners to hear. And we were talking to Joe Pulizzi, and he's from Cleveland, where they have the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And you were telling me a story about how the electric guitar came to be and how you used that in a presentation. You want to tell our listeners?
Yeah, so years ago, when I was more of a practitioner around marketing automation, I was asked to speak at some road shows for Marketo. And I put together a presentation, and really the core part of the presentation was, every marketer, when they have to look at what platforms they're using, comes to a crossroad where they have to figure out, do I go to the left or do I go to the right? And, I know that pain, I know that feeling, and so I wanted to convey that in this presentation. So I used the example of music, particularly rock and roll music, to kind of do my storytelling. And I was really trying to show the differences between, at that time, Marketo and Eloqua. I had used both platforms, so I felt very comfortable talking about what the differences were at the time between the platforms. But to visualize it, I used the theme of rock and roll music, and I explained that out in the world of rock music, it's not a definitive rule, but there are guitarists that everyone knows of that really prefer the Fender line of guitars, the Stratocaster, the Telecaster, things like that. And then there are a number of guitarists that like the Gibson Les Paul guitar, different sound, things like that. And so I made the comparison between those guitarists and the differences in the guitars, and then tied that back to the differences between Eloqua and Marketo. It was really well received, and I'm told that they took that presentation and went back to Marketo, and it was presented all throughout Marketo, and it was quite the buzz over there for a long time. And from that, I was able to actually end up getting a job with Marketo down the road from that. And as I got introduced over at Marketo back in the day, I would have a number of people say, "Oh, you're the one that did that guitar presentation." Yeah. So, that just shows you the power of storytelling and what people remember. And, if they can visualize it, it helps them remember and tie back to the benefits and things like that. So it was a very fun project.
Would you consider yourself a Les Paul guy or a Fender guy?
I don't know. I'm reading a book right now on it's called The Birth of Loud, which really goes into the whole history of how the electric guitar came about, and the paths that Leo Fender took and the path that Les Paul took with Gibson. I find myself in the middle. I have an appreciation for both. In the early days, I was very much a Fender guy, but right now I'm really pretty deep into modern blues, and that's a lot more typically with the Gibson Les Paul. How about you? Guitar man.
I lean towards Fender. I'm a Fender guy.
Okay.
That's just what I grew up playing. I played with musicians who played with Fenders, and I played with musicians who use the Les Paul.
Right.
And there's definitely a persona between the two.
Yeah.
So I totally resonate with that story. And I think like the more grungy sound with the Fender, the alternative between distortion and clean with the Fender. I mean, that's just kind of, I don't know, for whatever reason, I just think of like early 90s rock.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe that's just what I grew up on, but...
Well, even earlier than that, too.
Yeah. The Jimi Hendrix with the Fender.
Hendrix,
yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, man, that's all good stuff. No, that's a great story. So, if you have a vision for the product that you're developing, or in this case, the marketing system that you're developing, there's multiple ways to do it. There's no one size fits all, and there's no right way or wrong way. It all it's all dependent on your situation.
Yeah, and again, I think with marketing, what comes into play is passion. So, I think that's why a lot of us stay in marketing as long as we do, and put up with all the challenges, not only from the process side, but the technology side and all of that. So, anytime you can tie, music or things like that into what you're doing, I think that just is a great plus. So, hopefully people listen to our Scott Brinker podcast recently, where you got the chance to perform and do your homage to Rush and Limelight and tie it back to marketing technology. So maybe we'll hear more from you in future podcasts.
Maybe so. Yeah, maybe so. And it's fortuitous, or I think it's all kind of tying together that we're talking about. We talked with Joe, and the Cleveland is the rock and roll capital of the world, right. And so yeah, maybe so. Maybe I'll have to noodle around on the guitar a little bit and come up with some other tunes.
I think that would be great. I look forward to it.
Okay. Well, if you're listening to this and you have a request for a song, hit me up on Twitter, hit me up on LinkedIn, let me know, and we'll see what happens. All right, guys, until next time, this is John and Kelly signing off.